part of Project 571, genetically engineered vampire created to destroy evil.
What do you want?
We need your help to kill a vampire.
Malleus Maleficario. It was written by a witch. The first witch. Titania.
That was a little snippet from The Witch's Hammer, the first film I ever solo directed, and it's just been remastered and re-released on Amazon. So if you like witches and vampires, then please do check it out. Anyway, let's get on with this week's episode. Hi, Jim here, and you're listening to the Honest Filmmaker podcast. This week, I'm talking to filmmaker Michael Head. Hi, Michael. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having us. Nice to be here.
Cool. So tell me a little bit about how you got into filmmaking.
I'm from a theatre background. So I had a lot of plays go out in London, Fringe Theatre. And then around COVID, I had a play called Time Transfer to the West End. Mm-hmm. And then as it shut down, then we had number one tour got cancelled, and I was actually trained to be a history teacher. Terry Stone from the Rise of the Foot Soldier franchise got in touch and said that your play Time, we'd like to turn it into a film. And I mean, that was a dream come true for me, but I knew nothing about film. Not even really acted on camera, never written for screen or anything like that. And then literally 6 weeks later, I'm on set. The film's been converted into a screenplay, and we was good to go.
Wow. So you're talking in the space of maybe like 3 or 4 years, and now you're directing your own feature films. That's a pretty quick jump. Is there anything, looking at the theatre stuff, what's transferable? What did you transfer from that into filmmaking?
As a director, the most important thing, in my opinion, is knowing the actors. I always liken it to being a football manager. Some people, need an arm around them. Some people need, a little bit of a kick up the backside at times. And also it's about communicating to their language, because I'm an actor as well, and my background is as an actor. It's how to get that message across. Some people, you have to liken it to life experiences. Some people you bring examples to the table. Some people you just give them creative freedom, So that's the main thing. It's the communication to actors. And then the other thing is I would say it's the industry side of things. Where I come from a theatre background, and I'm not a rich man. I'm from a single working class family, single parent working class family in Bermondsey. And me and my wife have always done our theatre work independently. So if I wrote a play and it didn't sell, I'm retired. And I now put that into play in film. I get a lot of people say to me, "Oh, I want to tell this story, and this is what I want to tell." And sometimes it's like, yeah, but you've got to almost approach it backwards. It's who's your audience? Why does your audience care? How do I cast for that audience? How do I market for that audience? Once you've got that, then you can make the film. Whereas sometimes I think people do it the other way around, which there's nothing wrong with that. But that's the thing that I've also learned since moving into film. It's not the creative side of it. It's I work with a BAFTA-winning director, Ray Burdis, who taught me an awful lot. He's absolutely brilliant. And he said, creatives don't make films. He went, producers make films. He went, they're numbers people. He went, you have to learn to like the industry in order to be creative. So they're the two things that I think I learned from my theatre background. Was I knew I had to sell X amount of seats. So I knew that was always the goal. So yeah, it's a mixture of the two, the business side and the creative side.
Yeah, that business side's so important, and it is hard. But if you do that work at the beginning and figure out who that audience is, when you come to package it and sell it, at least you know who you're selling to. But it is difficult, especially if you're a film student. You come out of film school, the idea of selling your art doesn't sit right. You want to make something you're passionate about. So yeah, getting that balance is really difficult. So who would you say, who is your audience? Is there an audience type you always aim these films at, or does it depend on the project you're making?
I think it depends on the project. I mean, my background is comedy. My stage plays, I wrote 2 comedy musicals. I wrote a gritty sort of romantic comedy that sort of builders in between us for 30 somethings. I also did a World War One play that was a true story about the football battalion. So comedy is the theme that runs through it. Obviously, being from working class, that is something that tends to shine through as a narrative for all my films. So yeah, I wouldn't say I have an audience. My first 3 films all happened to be British gangster films, but that wasn't the plan. That isn't what I do. That's just my first film happened to be on a crime-based play, so it was become a gangster. I hate that word, but it become a that sort of film. And because that did well, my next 2 that followed on very, very quickly were of the same ilk. But since then, I've made films that are very, very different. So yeah, I don't think you can. I think you've got to be careful of putting yourself in a box, but at the same time, I think you've got to be aware of. I always say when people come to me and say I want to tell this story, I'm like, but other than you, who cares? And why should they care? And how do you make them care? And that sometimes sounds a bit harsh, but I just mean every story is worth telling, but you've got to know how to tell it, and you've got to know who wants to listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 things I want to pick up on there. One is the gangster. No, you don't like the word, but the gangster film, because that is. So I work in horror predominantly, but that gangster kind of genre is very popular. It's got a very sort of active audience that are interested in those movies. Is there, and you mentioned Terry Stone, who's obviously all over that particular genre. He's in all of those films, producing all of those movies. Is that, take me inside that world of making that type of movie. What's that like? And is it a lot of familiar faces, a lot of the same people working on these productions, or how does it all work from someone who's an outsider?
Yeah, so I do come from that world. My granddad was, I always say, an alternative businessman. But I come from that world. It was something that I grew up with. And what I found was, I think some films are very much about the violence. And the real world isn't like that. It's about, if you're in prison for someone for 16 years, it's all right being the hardest man in prison. But actually if you can entertain everyone and tell a good story, you'll get on much easier. So I grew up around that sort of working class story environment. So all of my things are narrative based, they're character based, they're script driven. So that was what I wanted to bring into my take of this world. I wanted to make films that my granddad would be proud of, that don't glorify villainy, it's not those people going around bashing each other up. It's got that family element, essentially these people risk their lives to provide for their family, and I'm not making that right, but they're the choices that they have. And there's a lot of loyalty in the world. So I wanted to bring my side to that story. And then working with Terry, obviously Terry is an expert. He's a very, very good filmmaker, and he knows that genre inside out. So it was very interesting to bring that genre with my sort of take to it. But yeah, there are obviously, it is a small industry, and there are a lot of people that, once you get to know people, like I said, the first film, well, in fact, sort of sidetracking slightly. So my dad in The Last Heist was Perry Benson. And then Perry introduced me to Ray Burdis. Me and Ray Burdis made a film together called The Gangster's Kiss. While on the set of that, I got to know John Hannah, Patsy Kensit, Sadie Frost, David Shaw actually already knew. But so I got to know these people and these filmmakers, the crew side of it, but also the actors. And then from that, I made my own film, Bermondsey Tales. And then from that, I took John Hannah, cast Frank Harper, who I've known for years, Alan Ford. So it is the same, I don't want to say it's the same sort of faces, but it's like any genre, isn't it? If you've got a horror actress that sells really, really well, why would you not cast them in your film? So it is, there are a lot of the same people, but I think sometimes it's given it's sort of put into a box unfairly, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And there must be something about those people that attract that audience as well. And getting I don't want to say a proper actor, but John Hannah's pretty pretty cool achievement to get in your, I guess, was that your debut feature or your second feature film?
So my first film was The Last Heist.
Yeah.
And I didn't direct that. Cos Greenock directed it. He's brilliant. Terry Stone produced it. I wrote it and was the lead in it. I was very lucky to play the lead. Then I did Gangster's Kiss with Ray Burdis, who obviously is known for Love on the Bay. Me and Ray co-wrote that, and he sort of took me under his wing, showed me the producing world, how production works. He, brought me on set all the time, and obviously I was lucky again to be in it. And he introduced me to people like John. I remember it was crazy. He was looking to cast, and one of the actors couldn't do it, and we was talking to different people. We'll chat with John, and John's absolute. He's phenomenal. And then I had my own script, Bermondsey Tales, that I wanted to write it, and I went the first two, Last Heist and Gangster's Kiss, were co-written. I went, I want to write this, and I don't want anyone to tamper with it. It's mine. And I was very lucky. The producer said, "Well, look, you should direct it." And he took it, had a lot of faith in me. And then I, gave the script to John. He went, "Oh, Mikey, I love it. I'm in." People like David Shaw I've worked with him 3 times before. David's a good friend of mine. Then we managed to get people like Alan Ford, Frank Harper. So we got Maisie Smith. We had an unbelievable strong cast. And also Dapper Laughs, or Daniel O'Reilly, but he's known as Dapper Laughs. He was in my West End play, and he was also in my first 3 films. So he was instrumental in everything. Without him, I wouldn't be here. So I think a lot of it as well is it's not what you know, it's who you know. And building yourself with the right team. Yeah. I've now been lucky. From Bermondsey Tales, I was hired straight away to direct a film called The Spin, which is out in cinemas soon, which is an Irish comedy about a failing music shop. So completely different. But my DOP, my first, the production design, costume design, my second AD, all of them I take with me. Yeah. I've got a core, what I call family, and they are integral to every film I make. People as well, Stephanie Frankham, who sort of like my right-hand lady, so to speak. So yeah, I think that's important as well. It's your crew. Once you've got someone, a lot of people, if you look at my films, I do use the same actors. Patsy Kensit's in my up and coming film as well, Jackie the Stripper. You do reuse actors because you know what you get and you know what they bring to the table, and you've got a relationship with them. But crew is, without my team, I wouldn't even think about making a film, because they know me and they make up for what I don't know.
Yeah. Absolutely, I know the feeling. The other thing you mentioned, so comedy. Now, I'd love to make a comedy, but it worries me about selling it. Always seems to me like a really hard thing to pitch, a comedy. Have you encountered that, and how do you get over that hurdle?
Yeah, so my first 3 films are British gangster films, so they say, but they're all comedies, especially. Last Heist, not so much, but Bermondsey Tales and Gangster's Kiss were out-and-out comedies. And I think you do have a bit of you can, not a ceiling to your sales, but I think comedy don't appeal to everyone. I know it sounds crazy, doesn't it? And the same, my latest film, Jackie the Stripper, is sort of a grindhouse comedy horror, loosely say. And some people say, oh, comedy horror, that doesn't, unless you really smash it like Shaun of the Dead, it's hard. So, yeah, I think it is something that I think you have to be aware of it. And again, you have to put the right actors in it. You have to appeal to that audience. And I think a lot of it's in the marketing. If you get a good trailer and the trailer makes people laugh, I think that can help. But, yeah, it is. I think, and also it's just making sure people actually find it funny. Is my first ever stage play, I stood on stage and I opened up a monologue. And my wife would tell you, I sort of glanced at the fire exit. And I was half tempted to run. Do you know anything? I've been telling people this is a comedy. What if no one laughs? So yeah, I think it is a hard sell. I think, well, no, it's not. It's comedy sell. But I think it is a hard. It ain't a hard sell. It's hard to market, is what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a difficult one, but then I guess also what you've managed to do is you've kind of created hybrids. So gangster comedy. Jackie the Stripper, is that horror, or is it, what's the sort of subgenre of that?
So I was lucky that Bermondsey Tales and A Gangster's Kiss both had West End premieres in about 11 days. And someone from the industry approached me and said, look, Mike, there's a ceiling to British gangster films. And I was like, they're my bread and butter. Yeah, but you should do horror. And I don't know the genre. I don't really watch the genre. It's not something that my wife doesn't like them. We've been together 20 years, so I just don't, by default, I don't see them. And when we started talking through the market for it, the audience for it, it just made sense. So I wanted to do something to do with history, because that is Bermondsey Tales is the fall of the Roman Empire. It links being the head of a crime family to being the head of the Roman, to being an emperor, there are parallels. So I looked at Jack the Ripper because it's something that interests me. And I went to my wife, who's my line producer, and she said, there's no way you're doing a Victorian film. She went, it costs way too much. She would behave. So in being dyslexic, I was joking. Oh, well, Jackie the Stripper, that's written, as a dyslexic person, they're practically the same words. And that was how it came about. So I wouldn't say it is a horror. It's certainly not a true horror. It's more of a grindhouse comedy. It's got a lot of action in it as well. So yeah, it is a hybrid. It is a, and again, that's the worry. True horror fans will go, it's not a horror film. So you've got to make sure that the comedy compensates for that, and you've got to make sure that the grindhouse again is one of them genres where if it blows up, there's a huge market for it, but you've got to pitch it right. You've got to have the right marketing, the right cast, the right all the tools to sell it, because any people starting out making a film is difficult. Selling a film is 10 times harder.
Yeah, definitely. So talking about going back to your first feature film you directed, what was the sort of biggest lesson you learned from that, do you think?
Surround yourself with good people. So I've never directed a film. I've not even directed a short, and I never wanted to be a director. We had a director on board to direct the film, and sadly they had to pull out. So we lost our DOP and our director a couple of weeks before filming. And the producer said, well, look, I'm invested now. Can't lose it. You do it. So I was unprepared. Never trained for it. Never went to film school. Never, I got interviewed. And they said, oh, how did you learn to be a director? I went, I watched a few videos on Studio Binder. And my DOP was laughing because he knew that was true. But my DOP, Seb Colt, fantastic. My first, Andrew Richards, he's made 40, 50 films. Stephanie Frankham, who does VFX and all that. Paul, I'm going to pronounce his name, Savulescu, who is my production design. Kelly Toad, who is costume. They are all absolutely integral. And actually, Kelly and Paul weren't on my first film, but they was on my second and my third film that I directed. So that's what I would say is have the right team around you. If you've got a great DOP, we communicate well. When I go, I want that and then that, he knows exactly what I mean, and he makes it look brilliant. So that's it's your team, and also it's some directors I've worked with or have experienced that it's ego. It's about them. It's not. You've got to realise you've got to have a vision, but you've got to let people play with that vision. And then the other side of it is the right cast. If you look at Bermondsey Tales, Alan Ford. As a director, what can you just let Alan Ford be Alan Ford. He's amazing. Frank Harper, phenomenal actor. Maisie Smith, it was her first feature film, and she enjoyed the freedom and the collaboration of being able having a bit more time that you maybe don't get on EastEnders. It's allowing people to bring what they bring to the table and trust in them while staying true to your vision.
Yeah.
And I didn't really encounter any problems with Bermondsey Tales because the cast they were perfectly cast and they was fantastic. My crew were great. And then I've learned, The Spin, which was my second film, is it's shot far better than my first because me and the DOP and that we've improved. And then my third film, Jackie the Stripper, is by far the best film I've ever made. not because I'm any better, but because I'm just that little bit more experienced. But the team have bonded, and we brought people like Paul and Kelly on that have added to that skill set. They've added to that pool of talent, and so it's not about me. I'll get the credit as the director, or I'll get slaughtered as the director. But the truth is, as a director, you're just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree. So one of the questions filmmakers will want answered is the productions you've worked on so far, how are they funded? Are they crowdfunded, private investors? Do you know where the money's coming from, or do you just get hired on? How's all of that work?
So the first one, I was nothing to do with that. I was literally brought in the last minute. I don't know too much about. Well, I don't know anything about that because it wasn't my business. Gangster's Kiss and was privately funded. Bermondsey Tales was solely funded by one investor, and the Spin was equity based. It was EIS and all that, people investing into a. Although the Spin, I directed that, but it wasn't my film. I didn't write it. I didn't produce it. And then Jackie, that we've just done, was privately funded by one investor, which is Franken Films. But we've got the EIS and we're bringing a pool of investors in. And with regards to investment, again, it's always how I've always worked is I've always said to the investor or the investors, if you give me X amount of money, like Bermondsey Tales was £250,000. If you give me that money, I can get you that cast. That cast should bring that audience. As a script, that's what I'm bringing to the table. I'm predominantly a writer. I think that's my biggest skill set. So between this script and that cast, with this marketing, and we had Kaleidoscope Distribute here, who were fantastic, you've got a fighting chance of making your money back. And so that's what I always say as well. When a lot of people send me scripts and they say, what do you think? And I'm like, well, the script is kind of irrelevant. It's what are you bringing as who's your cast? Who are you? I'd rather make a rubbish film that's got a good cast that's going to sell than make a great film that hasn't really had the marketing, hasn't had the strategy behind it, and isn't going to reach a target audience. Which again sounds cynical, but that's what the investors want. My job is always, if you give me £1, I'll give you £2 back. Because the minute that doesn't work, I'm back to being a history teacher.
That balancing act of making something good but also making something that people are actually going to get to see is the pinnacle. That's where you want to get to, is making something good that people are actually going to get to see, not something really good that's just going to disappear and never be seen anywhere. So
and also it's compromise as well. I mean, my last film that we done, Jackie the Stripper, it's got some huge action fight sequences. So that takes a lot of time. So obviously that comes at a cost of the scripted side of it, the comedy side of it, and working with the actors. And Spencer Collins, who did the fight, was amazing. My production guy, Paul, took a lot of time up building the sets, which again is taken away from the shoot time. Kelly, who was on costume, a lot of time with fitting. So you've got to build that compromise as well, because if you don't allow the people the time to do their job, it's going to affect production. But at the same time, you need your time to shoot. So everything, no one's ever got enough money to make a film. Even people that have got 180 million probably wish they had 300, So you've got to work out what your compromises are, and you've got to work out what your red flags are, what your lines in the sand are. Okay, right, you have your time to do that, but I need to get this done. I need to, that bit I can shoot over, and we can shoot that quite quick, and we can maybe skinny down the shots. However, this bit is vitally important. I need that shot, or I need to get that comedy take right. That I might spend 15 takes on that, because that needs to be exactly what I want. So that's the other thing, is it's compromise, because you will never ever get what you want. And there's the film you write, the film you film, and the film you edit. And they're the three stages that you have to be aware that there's give and take on every one. And each process is very different. I think if the film you write is end up being the film you end up with, you've failed somewhere along the way, because you have to have that creative process. But it is also, it's a balancing act. You know, indie film is always going to be difficult. You're always up against time. You're always up against money. I want 7 helicopters, and they're like, well, you've got a skateboard. Okay, I'll make it work.
Yeah, I know the feeling. And yeah, that's something I always say is it's hard, but you have to let go of that version of the film that you've been obsessing over when you're writing it and you're dreaming about, you're going to bed dreaming about. That's cool, but that's not what the film's going to be when you've finished it. And letting go of that will free you up on set, and it'll free you up in the edit, and it will just make it, like you say, much more creative. What I was going to ask you about was, I've seen a couple of clips of you directing online. Maybe I think I saw a crowd scene. So something a new director might struggle with is confidence, is having the confidence either in those crowd situations or even in a small intimate situation, especially if it's in your first film and you've got an experienced DOP and you've got all these people around you. Any advice on confidence, having the confidence in front of your crew and your cast?
So for me, it's 50-50. You've got to have some confidence in yourself. You've got to back yourself. You're putting yourself in that room. If everyone else is buying that, but my first day on set, when I'm there with Alan Ford and John Hannah and Frank Harper, who are people that I grew up idolising, you can feel imposter syndrome. But you've got to take a step back and think, well, everyone else is here because they believe in me. Every actor that signs onto your film is in that room because they believe in the script and they believe in you as a director. So that's got to give you a bit of confidence. And then the other side of it is having the confidence in the people around you. You know, sometimes you get things wrong and you've got to trust the people around you to go, actually, you need that. Of course I do. Yeah, all right, okay, we'll do that. Or I like that, but how about this? You've got to you've got to have the confidence to let other people suggest stuff and collaborate. But then you've also got to back yourself because ultimately it's your vision. So I would say that's the thing is no director ever ends up on set by accident. So if you're fortunate enough to be on set, it's easy said than done. You've got to back yourself because you're there and you're there for a reason. Everyone in that room believes in you. So that's got to fill you with a bit of confidence. And also the actors, trust the actors. You know, I always, I mean, I'm in my films. I always put myself in the film because I'm, I don't know if you're allowed to swear, but I'm one of them.
You can, yeah.
So I put, you know what I mean? So I always put myself in the film. So I back myself as an actor, but at the same time, you've hired them actors because you believe in them. So have the confidence in letting them do their job. And then the only issue you've got is communication. And that is something that will come with experience. And you won't get there overnight. It will take time. And again, I always say direct stage. You know, if you can do a stage play and you can work with them actors, that's your breeding ground. Every film director should direct at least one stage play because you haven't got the cameras, you haven't got the blood, you haven't got the cuts, you've literally got a room, some lights and the actors. And if you can do that, that's the perfect foundation for the communication, which is the most important thing. I've been on other film sets as an actor where I've seen the communication break down, or I've seen that what the director wants isn't what the actor's doing, and the director can't explain to the actor, and the actor can't understand. So, you know, that's if you can communicate and you've got a good team, you can't fail. It'll be difficult, and you'll be up against challenges, but you will always find the answer, and the answer that you find is often better than the original question you was asking. Most of my films I've not had the money or the time, so we've come up with something sometimes on the fly, or you know, the film we did in Ireland, 80% of it was improvised. We wanted a car, it was meant to be there for 26 days. I think we had it for 9, so we had to rewrite stuff and make stuff up. But the answers we were coming up with were far more interesting than the original script anyway, or what we had down. So, you know, trust the process.
I hope that was useful. If you're interested in learning more about micro and low budget film production, I suggest you check out How to Make an Indie Feature for $10,000 with Sean and Taylor King. They've pretty much got their own little production company and studio set up and make a film every year, get them out there and actually make profit on them. So it's a really interesting chat. See you on the next one.